There are hundreds of tutorials online for how to make a platformer. A dozen list of shoot 'em ups that are foundational to the genre. A million free bullet and monster and explosion assets that you can use in your first game. But where's the tutorial for making a pet sim? What's the best engine for making a visual novel? What games should I study to learn how to make a great fashion game? Whenever it comes to making cute and girly games, the industry's answer is always just, I don't care. Figure it out yourself. Until now. Hello, I'm Terry Ross, and I make girly games. And in this video, I am going to give you an insanely comprehensive guide about how to make them yourself as a solo developer. We will cover how to pick your own engine, every discipline you need to know and how to learn it, who are the girlies you need to follow, books you should read, iconic games you should study. I will even give you some tips based on which girly game genre you are most interested in. If you have always wanted to make video games yourself, but have never had any idea where to start, or maybe you're just looking for a fun summer hobby to get into, this is the video for you. Prelude. You don't need to learn how to program. And other lies you have been told. I'm gonna hold your hand when I say this. If you want to make your own video games, you need to learn how to program. Wait, where are you going? You don't need to learn how to program is a very comforting lie the industry loves to tell marginalized newcomers. But if you even think about it for 2 seconds, you'll realize it doesn't make any sense. Before art, before music, before story, before even design, code is what makes video games real. We are constantly contriving ways to avoid learning this insanely fundamental skill, but it doesn't benefit anybody to do that. Without code, you'll never be able to make the games that you want to make. Everyone else out here is making thrice reheated Metroidvania nachos, okay? They're not making girly games. The most infuriating part of this lie is it implies you should try to avoid programming because it's kind of hard and not everybody can do it. Bullshit! Programmers are not geniuses, babe. They invented NFTs. I know how to program. And gun to my head, I could not tell you which of these states is Utah. I think it's on this side. You are smart enough to learn how to program, and you should learn how to program, and you will learn how to program. And none of that node-based cop-out bullshit either. You are not making your magnum opus in Game Builder Garage, girl. Get up off the ground. An engine is the software that translates and packages your code into a game. There are a lot of them out there, and they come in all different shapes and sizes and different prices. They specialize in a lot of different things. I could waste a whole bunch of time comparing all of them and weighing the pros and cons and swamping you with decision fatigue, which is the last thing you need right now. Or I could just tell you the 2 best options, which are Unity and Godot. Both of these engines are robust enough to make pretty much any game you want. They're both free and they have active communities and plenty of beginner tutorials. And in the next 60 seconds, you're gonna know which one's right for you. If your ultimate goal is to work in the game industry, in other words, you prefer that somebody pay you to make their games, go with Unity. Unity currently has about 25% market share in the game industry, which is huge. And studios prefer to hire people who have experience in the engine that they're already using. Knowing Unity will make you an excellent candidate for a job, and it'll be a lot easier to get into the game industry. On the other hand, if your goal is primarily to make and sell your own games, go with Godot. Godot does nearly everything Unity does, but leaner, faster, and a little more intuitively. Unity is currently free for most people up until a certain income level, and then you have to pay a licensing fee. But Godot is completely free and open source, so it's quickly becoming the preferred engine for indie developers. So that was it. You probably have your engine now. You can see I am not here to waste anybody's time. I want you to get straight into the making stuff. Are you ready? When you first install and open up your engine, you'll probably feel totally overwhelmed. How do I get started? What the fuck is that thing? What do all these buttons do? Don't panic. It is time to enter tutorial heaven. Today, there are so many tutorials online that are completely free and honestly very beginner friendly. You're gonna wanna pick one that shows you how to make a complete game from startup all the way to final export. It actually doesn't matter what the game is. Right now, we're just focusing on getting comfortable with your engine and writing code. These are two that I recommend for Unity and Godot. These are great because they come with free assets, which means you don't have to worry about making art or anything. You can just focus on doing the tutorial. At this stage of learning, I have two major tips for you. One, never skip a lesson that you've already heard in another tutorial. The key to locking in knowledge is repetition. So the more you do it, the better you'll be able to remember it and recall it and do it again when you need to. Two, you may run into a situation where you follow the tutorial exactly and you feel like you're doing everything right, but for whatever reason, the executable isn't running or you're getting some kind of error. This is actually great because it gives you the opportunity to practice troubleshooting your code and looking for errors. That is the majority of what game development is, honestly. Every engine has something called a console log, and whenever you run into an error, it can give you information. Usually it'll even tell you the line and like the character that it's running into a problem. A lot of times it feels like bugs are just like these horrific things that are like impossible to detangle, but like truly 90% of the time, all of my bugs are just like typos that I made. So now imagine if you did just 10 of these beginner game tutorials back to back. Most of them don't take that long to complete, which means if you sit down every evening with a little matcha, a little pink spritz, and you just casually follow along for a couple of hours, you will be able to make 10 games in like a few weeks. And incidentally, while you were making all of these games, you were also learning a whole bunch of fundamental programming concepts. And if for whatever reason, some of these terms are missing or you don't recognize them or you feel like you didn't really get to use them that much, you do now have the experience to crack open an intermediate tutorial and just go in depth. You can do that. Or this is another thing that you can do. You do now have the experience to competently read your engine's documentation. Documentation is basically like the dictionary of your engine. From now on, if there's anything that you encounter that you're not familiar with, you can look it up in the documentation and it will explain to you basically how it works and how to use it. And guess what, babes? In a matter of weeks, you have gone from a total beginner to an advanced beginner, possibly even an intermediate programmer. If you wanted to, you could start making your own games. As soon as they're able, everybody wants to jump in and make their big dream game right away. I'm gonna say, hold on. This is your first time making games on your own. Go ahead and take a step back and practice making just 10 super tiny games first. They don't have to be great. They don't even have to play super well. Just get into the habit of making your own game from start to finish. This is gonna give you the experience to understand genre conventions, get even better at programming, and understand scope. Scope means the planned size of your game. Number one beginner game dev mistake is to overscope and give yourself way more work than your experience level currently matches. And just to be clear, you can make a big game eventually, just like I could do the splits eventually. I just have to work my way into it. And I'm not working my way into it right now. I'm too busy doing this. But one of the ways that you can prepare to make your big game is by breaking it down into features and then making a tiny game based on each part. Are you following me? So for example, if your dream game is to make a gardening fairy sim with romanceable characters and like a weather system, you could start by making a tiny game about a fairy, a tiny game with gardening mechanics, a tiny game with romance, a tiny game with a weather system. And then later on, it's a lot easier to just combine all of those things because you already know how to do them. These games do not have to be good. They just need to work. So don't waste too much time worrying about art or music or anything fancy like that. Remember, we are working our way into the splits, metaphorically. So now is probably a good time to be asking ourselves, what kinds of games do I want to make? Each genre has its own like programming conventions and like design patterns that are really common, so it may be beneficial for you to play a lot of games and study how they work. Life is so hard for us, I know. For example, many puzzle games organize themselves on grids, and the way that you create a grid in code is with something called a two-dimensional array, and the way that you go through a two-dimensional array in code is with something called a for loop. You should probably, learn what that is in programming. So practice making a game that like uses two-dimensional arrays. Practice making a game that uses for loops. Make like a tiny Bejeweled. Make like a tiny Tetris. These are great ways to practice. What are some girly puzzle games that I think you should really play? Be Glitched. Fantastic. Princess Farmer, so much fun. I want everyone to play My Chan's Sweet Buns. It's a very cute game with a very naughty name. Oh my god, you have to play Petal Crash. I love Petal Crash. I think it's the best, like, cute, girly puzzle game I've ever played. Please play Petal Crash. You could also study games that like don't use grids. They have more classic puzzles like Professor Layton and the Curious Village, big series, big fun series, or Assemble with Care. Maybe you want to make fashion games. This is a really interesting genre because design-wise, everyone is taking completely different approaches. Style Savvy plays completely differently from Dress to Impress, but like they are undisputably both fashion games, But one thing that all of these games have in common is they have a lot of clothes for you to dress up in, so maybe make a tiny dress-up game. Learn how to make inventory systems or crafting systems. These are really, really essential programming concepts. What other fashion games should I assign you? Pop Cutie. Oh my god, absolutely play Pop Cutie. Love and Berry, dress up and dance. Tokyo Snap. Play Tokyo Snap. I think it's just a demo, but play the demo. It's good. Study how all of these different games approach their fashion system. Oh my god, also read Maria Yermenko's analysis of Love, Nikki. That's essential reading, absolutely. Fashion games are really interesting. This is the one that definitely requires more like experimentation and like exploration, but like fuck it, that's what we're doing right now. Pet and garden simulators are also a really fascinating genre. Obviously, they are about caretaking, but I think if you look a little bit deeper, you will notice that they have a lot to do with players and their relationship to time. Practice making games with timers. Practice making a real-time clock. Believe it or not, your engine can actually get your computer's clock information. It's a really creepy, really useful function. The state machine is a very common concept in programming, but I think it's especially important when you're making a pet game because pets literally have different states, so they will behave in a different manner depending on what state they're in. So practice making games using state machines. But most importantly, go dust off that Tamagotchi. Go visit the Chow Garden. Go look at your Nintendog, which you have abandoned for several years. Really pay attention to how these games interact with time. I promise you, you are going to learn some really interesting things that I think will be beneficial to you. Other fantastic games that you absolutely need to play in this genre. Pack-a-Pets on mobile. I love everything that Proto makes. Wobble Dogs. Really, really interesting. It combines pet sim with like genetics and breeding. This is another kind of like common thing in pet sims. Go play Turin by Sock Pop. I love Sock Pop. Okay. Look, I know my audience. Like I know why most of you are here, and you want to know how to make a visual novel or like a dating sim or whatever. You would much rather circumvent all of the amazing ways in which games build emergent narratives with players, and instead you want to make them read a story on a screen. And I'm trying to forgive you for that. But if you're going to be wrong, you might as well do it correctly. If you are making narrative games, the most important programming concept you can learn is the dialogue system. In my experience, really good dialogue systems, like the ones with dynamic text, interesting choices that change depending on certain scenarios, these do take some time to master. So please, before you start writing that epic 8-part werewolf romance, take a little time to practice making dialogue systems. You'll also want to know how to create and manage multiple save files. This is really interesting and specific. Narrative game players like absolutely love to save scum. It is like part of the gameplay experience to them because they have to see what every ending does and what every choice does. So if you don't give them the opportunity to do that, they will riot. Oh, here's another tip for narrative writers. Code is read linearly. So if you're trying to write a story, it's a really bad idea to do it directly in the editor. So there's this free tool called Twine that a lot of professional narrative writers use, and it's fantastic. You can see these boxes as like a visual representation of the story, and you can even write in like choices and variables into the software and like play test it in real time. So what a lot of professional devs do is they will write and prototype the story in Twine and then port it into their engine of choice. Game design wise, I think the best visual novel there is Ace Attorney, the Ace Attorney series. I know it's not really girly, but the way that those designers managed to combine like all of the classic visual novel elements, right? It's just text, it's just some backgrounds, it's just some characters, but the way that they sort of like move all of these elements in a dynamic way to create this really immersive courtroom drama, it's god tier. Dating sim wise, biased take, but I feel like we can do better than just making games that are like, say the right thing and give your crush the right gifts and you win the game. It's like, it's been 50 years. Like we can do something better than that, right? So the games that I recommend you play are Monster Prom and Prince's Debut, because what I love about these games is they're able to perfectly mesh a romance narrative and gameplay in this really unique, compelling way. Okay, so those are all of like the genre-specific tips for girly games that I could think of, but I hope you know that this is in no way a limitation of what girly games can be. Girly is a vibe, it's a theme, it's an aesthetic veneer that you can apply to any type of game. You can make a girly shoot 'em up, you can make a girly punishing platformer, you can make a girly horror game. Lots of people have. This is a creative field, ultimately, okay? Nobody is here to tell you what's right or wrong. Just find what you're interested in and make it. And hopefully you make it girly. I would love that. Once you start leaving tutorials behind, you're gonna start making code that sometimes doesn't work the way you intended it to. If looking at your engine's console log or the documentation doesn't give you the answers you need, you are encouraged and entitled to ask for help from the larger game dev community. Your engine has its own subreddit and forums, and these are the best places to get answers to your very specific coding questions. Now, I wish I didn't have to share this tip, but it unfortunately comes from lived experience. Unless it's absolutely relevant, I would recommend that you don't mention that you are making a girly game. You are going to find that the quality of your answers will be a lot more helpful and a lot less patronizing if everybody just assumes that you are another random tech bro. Yeah, I mean, it's not like a completely lawless place. Like, people are gonna help you, right? But I hate that. I hate that that's still a thing and there's not like currently a better way to find help. Let's move on. Having art or music experience is certainly a very nice bonus when you are making games, but there are ways to make your game look and sound pretty without having to pay anyone else or having to learn an entirely additional discipline. So I'm gonna give you some tips about how to get those resources. For art, itch.io and OpenGameArt are fantastic places to get free assets that you can just use in your game. This is the asset pack that I used when I was learning programming. I really recommend actually 1-bit art, especially when you are practicing the programming, because it's literally just black and white. It's super simple. You don't have to think about color theory or get caught up in the details while your brain is trying to focus on learning. If you do want to make your own game assets though, Krita, am I pronouncing that right? Krita? That is free digital painting software. Blender, obviously free 3D modeling software. In terms of pixel art, Sprite, I also don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but Sprite is $15. You know, it's not free, but it's relatively cheap. And it's, I think, probably the industry standard or becoming the industry standard for pixel art. So you could do that. Pixel art, I think, is also very accessible and easy to learn. I have never taken the time to learn music production. Music is not my forte. So I've always gotten my soundtracks from, I get it from OpenGameArt, I get it from Dova Syndrome, that's a Japanese website, and freesound.org. And I have also made my own sound effects with just like a microphone and Audacity. That's free, kind of like light audio editing software. I became my own Foley artist, and that's how I make sound for my games. It's really not that complicated. From here, there probably isn't that much more beginner advice that I can give you, because You aren't a beginner anymore. But there will probably be days when you run into a super annoying bug, or your manager extended your shift and now you're so tired and you can't program, or, you know, some asshole on Reddit undermined you and now your self-esteem is crushed, and you're just gonna be stuck for a little while. For this, I can offer you a last little sprinkle of inspiration. This is my favorite part. I've clipped my microphone to my titty and I'm gonna show off all of these amazing books that you can read because I love books. If you want a really, really good game design book, you should absolutely read A Game Design Vocabulary by Anna Anthropy and Naomi Clark. This is the best game design book I think that's ever been made. It's really, really simple. Like, it's small. It just gives you all the information you need and it makes it super clear. Highly recommend it. This is not a game design book, but I still also recommend Joyful by Ingrid Fetterly. It kind of goes into the reasons why shapes and objects and things in like the design space like make us happy. It's like semi-psychology, semi-design. I think game designers should read this book. We have Ready Player 2 by Sharon Chess. This is an analysis of girly games specifically and how we perceive them, how they shape us, and how they shape culture. It's crazy that this book was written like 10 years ago, but it's already like not out of date, but it's already, the industry has advanced so much since this was written. But I definitely recommend it. It talks a lot specifically about women gamers and the mobile industry. Really great history book, lots of fun. Gender inclusive game design. This was written by Shirin Gray Nure, who she worked at Her Interactive. That was like her big claim to fame for a really long time. This book basically predicted the wholesome games and the cozy games movement like 20 years before it happened. And she was like, we should be making games like this. And everyone's like, shut up. Nobody wants to play those games. And it's honestly really sad to realize that she was so right and nobody listened to her, but fantastic, fantastic analysis of games that are like not action oriented. And finally, the Bible. This is From Barbie to Mortal Kombat with Justine Castle and Henry Jenkins. And this was the first like attempt that anyone had ever made to study the industry or the space of making video games for girls, which eventually evolved into, obviously, girly games. I could honestly talk about game books all day. I have a huge collection. Let me know in the comments if you ever want me to do like a shelf tour, but that's not what this video is about. Okay. There are other game developers who are doing what you do, and you need to give them the follow. Sondering Emily, Nash Allery, Sophia's Coding, Jane Fiona, she's making Don't Stop Girly Pop, Eloise LaRoche, Olivia Haynes, Fibicon Museum, Girl Worlds. The girls are out here, okay? And then there's me. Again, I'm Terry Ross. I'm making girly games. I'm talking about girly games. Give a girl a like and a subscribe. What more can I say? So you started this by making 10 tutorial games and then 10 tiny games on your own, which means by now you have made 20 whole games. Let that really sink in for a second. Just a little while ago, you had never written a single line of code, and now you have the skills to make any game you want. I have done all I can do at this point. I mean, the video is basically over. I just only have one final thing to say. The world is waiting to play your ideas. So girly, go make some fucking games. Thanks for watching.